Synthia Varela, born in 1975, had a sister 5 years older than her. Their parents divorced shortly after Synthia was born, and the girls were in the custody of their father, rarely ever seeing their biological mother. In 1976, her father meets another woman, and they end up getting married in 1983. Her father and stepmom worked in the Army Corps of Engineers, and they moved the family to Saudi Arabia the year of their marriage. Synthia was 8 years old. Synthia and her sister are described to have had excellent childhoods, traveling with their father and stepmom to many different locations across the world, including Jordan, Greece, Germany, Switzerland, Spain, Italy, Hong Kong, and more. Eventually, the family settles down in Albuquerque, and here, Synthia attends high school. She is remembered as an extremely energetic and independent young girl, but the older she grew, the more rebellious she became. Synthia had begun to get into trouble at her school, and it got so severe that she was expelled. Her family describe that they desperately tried to help her with all of the resources they had available to them, but nothing they did worked, and Synthia would become more and more rebellious. When Synthia was 15 years old, she runs away from home and is later picked up by police. As a result of her poor behaviors, Synthia is placed in group homes. It is reported that she would often run away from these as well. Rules and restrictions were not something that Synthia had any desire to abide by. Over the course of her later teenage years, Synthia racks up a staggering amount of arrests, shoplifting, disorderly conduct, concealing her identity, failure to appear in court, contempt of court, failure to comply with probation conditions, aiding illegal activity, prostitution, and many, many drug-related charges. October of 1993, Synthia is serving time behind bars and about to be released, but it's here that she gives birth to her first child. It's around this time in her life, after her release, Synthia becomes absorbed in the drug meth. After the birth of her first son, she moves in with her 18-year-old boyfriend, who's a drug dealer. She is also 18 at the time. A few months later, in February of 1994, police raid their home. During the raid, Cynthia's boyfriend grabs a bag of cash, a gun, and he pushes Synthia out the door. The baby is left in the house. As they flee, her boyfriend is shot by police and he's wounded. The gunshot is non-fatal, but he collapses on top of Synthia, and they're both quickly swarmed by officers. When police apprehend them and search the property, they find the baby unharmed inside, along with a multitude of drugs, a submachine gun, and other various weapons. During the investigation of this incident, medical staff would notice multiple burn marks and bruises all over Synthia, and she eventually admits that these were a result of physical abuse from her boyfriend. Her boyfriend Alan is sent to prison, and although Synthia isn't charged with anything for this event, her son is taken from her by Children's Services. Synthia is fearful that she may never see him again, and her father and stepmother agree to take the boy and care for him until Synthia is able to get her act together. As time passes, Synthia begins to resent her father, seeing as he stayed firm to the court's ruling that she was not to have custody until it's been legally approved. Synthia, over the next few years, goes on to have 3 more children, the last being born testing positive for cocaine. Despite this, the 3 children remain in her custody. The oldest out of these 3 children is a young boy named Omaree. As a side note, he was also born in prison. Due to Synthia being in and out of prison, in addition to going on extended meth binges and disappearing for weeks on end, she would often leave her children in the care of others. These people would say that they had Cynthia's children much more than she did. Throughout 2006 to 2011, Synthia would often dump the kids on them for weeks, sometimes months at a time. Her family friend, who was one of these caretakers, even had permission from Synthia to take the children to Arizona, where the family was moving to. Although Synthia agreed to this and was aware that it had happened, the family recalls receiving a confusing phone call from CYFD, the Children, Youth and Families Department. On this call, they're told that they have to give the kids back, otherwise kidnapping charges would be filed. The family was hesitant to do this, seeing as they didn't believe Synthia was fit to care for them, but not wanting to get into a legal dispute, they reluctantly handed the children back over to their mother. By this time, Synthia had married a man by the name of Stephen Casaus. By all records, he too was a troublemaker, with a lengthy rap sheet. From the years 1998 to 2005, Stephen would rack up 22 felony arrests and 7 felony convictions. All of these were related to violent assaults and drug-related charges. Synthia and her 3 children are living with Stephen in a house in Albuquerque, and it's said that the relationship between the 2 adults revolves predominantly around drugs. That's what they bonded over the most. They're making their money through avenues like drug trafficking and stolen vehicle transfers. In addition to this, they also have another way to obtain money: public assistance. Throughout the years of 2007 to 2012, there were 9 reports to CYFD where different people had concerns about the children's well-being. There are a number of reported, troubling incidents relating to the care of these children, and I'll go over 3 that have been widely reported on. The first, a teacher had noticed bruising on Omaree's face. When she asked him what had happened, he told the teacher that his mother had struck him with a phone and a belt. Officers were called to the school, and when they arrived, they found a CYFD worker had gotten there first. They were sitting in a room with Omaree and his mother. At this point, the officer was concerned that Omaree was sitting with his alleged abuser before they had a chance to speak with him, and when asked what had happened, Omaree changed his story, denying any abuse from his mother. Even after being separated from her and questioned alone, Omaree still wouldn't admit that his mother had hit him. Nothing eventuates from this incident. The next incident sees a 911 call made from a bystander at a shopping center. She reports that she saw a woman punching a boy in his stomach in public. It is learned that the lady was Synthia Varela and the boy was Omaree. An officer arrives at their house, and Omaree denies that this had happened. There is body cam footage associated with this call-out.
And so I just want to make sure the kid's okay, he's not bruised up and cheating on her.
Yeah, no, just come in. Go ahead and put it. You guys got it.
How you doing? What's up?
We just did earlier. My son has had just a little incident, and I set him down at the cricket store, and I used the wrong language. I apologize.
Okay. I'm going to talk to him briefly for a second. Are you good in here, Ashley?
Yeah.
Hey, you're not in trouble. Don't be upset.
I do have a caseworker that I work with. We got him in therapy. He is on medication.
What's your name?
Omaree.
What is it?
Omaree.
Omaree, can I talk to you out here? You're not in trouble with me, okay? All right, so don't be scared, okay? I just want to talk to you, okay? Omaree, my name's Jeff, and I'm a police officer, and I just came here today to make sure you're okay. Are you okay? What happened in the store today?
I was messing around.
You were messing around? Yeah? And what happened?
I got
You were acting up, and so what happened? Like, how'd you get in trouble, Omaree? What did your mom do to discipline you in the cricket store? Yeah, but what did she do? Did she put her hand on you? Did she strike you? Well, I think the folks at the store said that she did. You don't remember what happened? Do you feel safe in your house? Yeah? Do you have any marks on you? Can I look at your arms and make sure you okay? lot of hair, dude. You're going to be a big old dude, huh? Can I see your back? So do you feel safe in your house?
Yeah.
Yeah, let me see your tummy. Show me your tummy. Okay. All right. Okay. So you're okay? All right. Let's go back here. My partner probably explained to you while we're here.
Yeah,
I guess there was an incident in the cricket store.
Yeah, I was using wrong language.
Well,
And I said,
we had heard.
no hitting. I don't hit him. I grabbed him by his jacket and set him on the chair.
You didn't slap him? Because that's what they're saying.
No, I did not slap him.
Okay.
You can look through the videos. I didn't slap him. My husband doesn't like that. I grabbed him by his jacket, yes, and I did sit him down, and I did use the F word.
Okay.
And I did tell the officer I do apologize for using the F word. But, I mean, as you can see, go ahead and finish this. I want nothing but the best for him. You know what I mean? And I know he has problems, and he has a lot of things, but I told him, if you don't tell Mom what's going on, and you don't tell us what's bothering you, we can't help you.
Okay.
So if you have a behavior and you act out on it, you're going to end up just getting yourself in trouble or disciplinary instead of having a better reaction.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
We're trying to show him worse than that good.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
I'll just let you after you know. Yeah, I know. It doesn't appear that you community violations a lot today, but we just want to make sure that the kiddo is okay.
That's why when you called, I was like, yeah, that's fine.
All right.
I figured probably somebody was going to call.
All right.
Because I kind of got upset, like I told her, and I trust that the manager over there too. So when we walk into cricket, there's a bench right here,
Okay.
and I kept saying, Omaree, come here, Omaree, come here. He wasn't listening to me, so I grabbed him by his jacket.
Okay.
And when I got him by his jacket, I set him on the chair.
Okay.
Because he had an accident, and I told him, you don't pee in the car, Omaree. If you're going to have an accident, you tell Mom you had an accident so I could change you. We don't wait till we get in public and I find the back seat of the car all wet. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So I tried to tell him, and that's where we just got him out of peeing in the habit of peeing on the walls. So now he's just in the habit of peeing on himself, and we're trying to tell him, it's okay if you do it, but let me know you did it so that you don't stink all day long, or you're not uncomfortable all day, or you pee in the car and we can't clean it and it starts smelling like pee.
Okay.
So it's just little stuff that we're trying to glitch out of those.
Gotcha.
But other than that, me physically hitting him, no.
Okay.
So.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
Still feeling concerned about Omaree's well-being, an ambulance is called. But again, the boy denies any attack from his mother. The officer tries their best to get information on what happened, but no other witnesses come forward, and surveillance footage of the store is unable to show anything. With no serious visible injuries on Omaree, and having next to no evidence that she punched him, nothing happens following this call-out either. Around 6 months before December 2013, a 911 call is placed. When the operator answers, they listen to what they believe to be an open call. No individual is responding to any questions, but the operator can still hear what's happening on the other end. It is believed that one of the children in the house placed this call. It's unclear if this call was an accident or not. One of the small children maybe was playing with the phone, or it could have been an intentional cry for help from Omaree. As the operator listens, what they hear is quite disturbing. It sounds like Stephen and Synthia are very upset with the boy after an incident where a drink was spilled in their vehicle. This call goes for around 6 minutes, and much of it is unintelligible yelling and ranting. Here's an excerpt from it.
You don't want to learn, do you? You want to live a hard life, I guess. Don't you, Omaree? Now! You make everybody sick around you, Omaree. Everybody. You make me and your mom sick, man. I really wish we could get rid of you, Omaree. I really think, man, or I can get rid of myself. Come on, nigga, man. You didn't do it on. Hey, you didn't do it on purpose. You don't learn, do you? That's a bad thing, Omaree. A 2-year-old is stronger than you are. Close that door right. Get him. Get the Minnie Mouse. Get over here if I can put the on your face, man. No, you is trouble, man. Trouble. Come on, man. Think of having to do this all the time, Omaree. You don't even give a man. You don't care about looks to you. That is not a road bird, man. How many times I shot? Not a bruise either. That's not a bruise. This doesn't hurt, so don't act like it hurts. You know, everything hurts you. How can it hurt you for one day and not hurt you the next day, Omaree? It doesn't, does it? You just want attention, right? Right? in. Yeah, beat the out of him, come on. You go to please stop! Shut the up before I really up you hard, man. You cause this on yourself, Omaree, because you don't want to change, do you? All right, you say. All I ask of you is something simple, man. And you can't even do that for me or your mother. There's something up for me, but first you want to. And you want me to be your dad. You are you going to be only never look at me as your dad, right? You worry, you, right? I hate that shit, man. What you say, Omaree? Shut the up! Try to change, Omaree. That's all we want. You understand it? We want what's good for you. It's not so hard to understand. It is for you because you don't do nothing about it. Don't you? Don't you? You make me so Omaree. Not even my worst enemy has got me as mad as you. Made me have so much hate towards a person. I never hated nobody like you in my life, ever. You know that, Omaree? I hate you more than I hated anybody in my whole life. And I've been on this earth 41 years. And nobody's ever made me feel the way you do, Omaree, ever. And you're a kid, that's sad. I told you to dab it like that. Get that icy hot off. You're a dumb man. You're a dumb kid, not dumb. You ain't never gonna never learn nothing. You're never gonna be about nothing, Omaree. You're gonna be a dumb all your life. Ain't nobody gonna ever be able to help you with a thing. Nothing. I know I won't. So don't expect me to ever help you with Omaree, because I'm done with you. Because you don't give a about nobody or nothing. Do you? There's that you not know how to talk? To show you get to cry and scream, huh? Huh? Oh, you got? Then what are you close to, huh? Stop crying, man. Get up, man. Come here, give me a hug, man. I'm tired of seeing you like this, man. I want better for you, Omaree. You understand that? That's all I want is better for you, so, man. I don't want you to be like this no more, Omaree, man. Please, boy. I want me and you and everybody to get along, man. Everybody to be happy. That's all I want, you. Yeah, I just want you to be happy. I want you to try. Why don't you want to try? I don't understand. You don't have to be scared or nothing in your house. I'm not never going to hurt you. Neither is Mom. We love you. We just want the best for you. That's all we want, kid. You never understand that? That's all I want for you is the best, man. I don't want you to have to suffer and live a hard life. You understand that? I want the best for you, Omaree. The best of everything.
The 911 lady sent me a call. She said if I want to hear the call, how bad it was. How's it going? How are you doing? Yeah, we get a call here. We heard there's some yelling going on and
Here?
yeah.
We just barely drove up like 5 minutes ago. We just came from Wendy's.
Okay, I don't know who's calling
No,
on
they
you
were
guys.
just fighting outside in the backyard. I mean,
Did
two
you-
guys in the front yard right here. There was like an Indian guy on a bike and an older man.
Okay.
But I don't know if they were arguing. They were just...
Yeah, you have kids?
I have
You guys have two kids? Can we see the other kids?
Yeah.
Can we talk to them?
Come on, guys. Come on.
Is there, you guys aren't having any issues, are you guys? Or
Oh, no, we go through Peanut Butter and Jelly. We go to ABC Days Care.
you guys all right?
Yeah.
There
We're
wasn't
just-
any yelling or anything going
not
on?
here at all. Just right, like I told you next door, they always have yelling and fighting next door. They're drunk. There are always cops next door.
Okay.
Always.
Yeah, so the call actually came to this house, but we don't know why
I don't
that
know.
would be happening.
cell phone.
It hit off a cell phone and it came right to here.
Off our cell phone? Oh, my baby was playing with the phone. Baby, did you touch Mom's phone? Where's my phone, Stevie? Where's Mom's phone? See, he knows where This is the little girl's room.
Okay.
This is Omaree's room, and this room. My daughter sleeps in there.
Oh no, that's fine.
That's the
We
kid.
just, like you said, we got a call. Okay, so
And this is the laundry room, and then we have a bedroom. Pick that picture up for Mom, Omaree.
Let me see if it came from her
I'll
phone.
get it.
what's your number, sir?
Recent calls unknown.
Oh,
Emergency.
yeah, he did
Oh
press
yeah.
emergency.
There
I'm
it is
sorry.
right there.
Stevie,
This
no
little
more
guy,
phone.
he gets all the phones. Like,
Okay, this was the situation though. Okay, when whoever got on the phone, it said that somebody was abusing a kid or yelling at the kid.
Tell us what
or-
happened when you guys were
Yeah,
riding
what
in the
happened?
car.
I mean, what happened when you guys were riding in the car? Was there anything?
Nothing. We
Sorry.
went to
Because it's all recorded on 911.
yeah, we went to Wendy's, and the only thing that I yelled is when she stood up out of her booster seat to hand me a Coke, and she dropped the Coke all over me, and I told her, Nivea, sit down in your car seat and put your seatbelt back on. I said, you know you're not supposed to get out of your seatbelt and give them
mad at her
food.
because
Not to give them Cokes or not to give them food in the
in the truck.
because the truck's going to get ruined, and she's not supposed to get out of her seatbelt.
Was there something mentioned about you saying, I wish you were never my kids or stuff like that?
No, he said sometimes he gets stressed out. He said sometimes I wish we never had kids.
I
That's
get
what he
stressed
said.
out with them, yeah.
That's
These
what
are all
he
my
said.
stepkids. It's just because they don't listen, and I was just stressed out. I was just having a bad day, and I just told her, I said,
He said,
God, I told,
sometimes I
why
wish
did you
you
have
didn't
so many
have
kids?
so
Because
many
me and her
kids.
have been off and on throughout the years.
And when he went to
Right.
prison, I was still married to him, and I got pregnant by somebody else. And he actually said, you know what, I'm not their father, but I will be responsible for them, he said, and I will put my name on their birth certificates or whatever. Times I do, he does say, God, babe, I wish you would have used protection. I wish you wouldn't have had so many kids. And it's true, though, because we were legally married, and I got pregnant 2 different times.
What's the mentioning, the call came out too, and it says, what's the mentioning about your bruise will heal? Somebody said something like that?
Mine right here, I have an infusion treatment.
Oh.
And he goes, don't worry about it, don't stress,
She
your
just got a
thing
new
will
line
heal.
today.
They just cut me again, and I told him I'm scared I'm going to get an
Because
infection.
they said that the call sounded pretty violent.
Oh, no, well, that's the only thing that was...
I mean, were you yelling pretty good?
Yeah, he was
I was
yelling
yelling
at
at
me
her,
because
yeah.
they
She
want
just
in the
lets them
car.
do it, and I get him upset with her
Because
I
he's
try
the
to
one
keep
that
our
always
stuff in
cleans
good
up.
condition.
As you
know what I
notice, our
mean?
house, you
No,
can't
yeah.
really tell we have kids. Because
No, you
he
guys are
constantly makes them clean up after themselves.
Your
And
cars are
when
clean
they're
and
with
Just trying to
me,
teach them responsibility.
when they're
and
with
they
me,
don't
I'm a
trying to
little
raise them
bit,
up right.
I'm a little bit more lenient because he's certified through the state to take care of me because I have a brain aneurysm.
They're stating that it sounded pretty violent, and I don't know how violent it got. Obviously, the kids seem like they're fine.
No, they're fine. He just yelled at me, and that's all he said. Is sometimes
getting
I
mad
wish
at
you
her.
would have used protection, or why did you have to have all these kids? That's what he said.
Okay.
And then I
So
yelled at her because she got out of her seatbelt, and they already
she
know
dumped
better.
There was
All
nothing.
over.
There was
We're getting ready
nothing.
to drive up.
There was nothing physical, though.
No,
I mean,
no.
Listen, I mean, you guys, you seem like good family, decent family. Just be careful
Okay.
on what you guys say when you say stuff like that.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
I'm
I
gonna
understand.
overlook it right now. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, although you say it wasn't violent, your violent is
Your
different
voice
from
is very
Right.
dominant. His
somebody
voice is
else's
very dominant.
perception.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
Because
like
I mean,
tell
a
him a lot of
male.
places I go, he doesn't notice that he's really loud.
But you gotta understand when a phone is being kicked around, thrown around, you can hear yelling in the background.
Stuff like that, yeah.
They don't know what's going on, and we appreciate you being honest.
Okay,
I mean,
come on. I
I
want
mean, you
it.
told us
Come on.
everything that happened,
You could get it.
and we
Go get it.
appreciate you being honest. But
Go get
just
it.
be
You
careful
can
with
get
that
it.
because if somebody gets the bad, if somebody gets
It's not scary.
you know, the bad
That's
perception
it.
on it, and or if somebody sees it,
Right,
you know,
of
you're
course.
yelling, they could report it, and if we
Yeah,
had a
it looks-
witness,
yeah, it doesn't
Yeah.
look right.
they're
of
going,
course.
you know, and not saying that you guys are, you know, doing bad in any way. I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
But
if you have to
still, it
discipline your
does, yeah,
kids,
you gotta watch
be
how you
careful how
speak
you
and stuff.
discipline the kids, you know, because I mean, like you said, they might take it a little bit wrong too, you know.
Okay.
So, if you guys have any
very much.
questions,
We appreciate
Take all
that.
this right
Yeah,
here.
sorry about the trouble.
it's all right,
You
man.
guys have to
We
come
just
on.
wanted to make sure that the kids are all right, though, you know.
Thank you.
All right, you guys, take care. All right, have a good one. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Because my son's 9 and he's going to be 10, is it not right for us to have him do yard work or teach him to do yard work?
Yeah, you can
Because
teach him.
our neighbor, the neighbor down the street, we had him out here. We were trying to teach him to rake
Good.
and to show and to like bag it. And she was like, "He's too young. You guys are going to get it. You guys can get in trouble for doing that." And I said, "Well, my husband's helping him. We're just teaching him how to do yard work."
Absolutely not.
Go put this on the table.
It's good for you to work.
Goodbye.
You'll get real strong, too.
Come on, honey.
All right?
Goodbye.
All right. Take care. We'll see you guys. Bye-bye.
Much like before, no action is taken following this incident. As a side note, and I'll get into it in more detail later in the video, But one of the officers that responded was actually fired following an investigation into this call-out. The reason being, he didn't listen to the 911 call, despite being requested to do so before arriving at the location, and a total of 15 minutes were spent at this location. But on the books, these officers were out on this call for 2 hours. The other hour and 45 minutes, it's unclear what they were doing. This now leads us to the date, December 27th, 2013. It's around 4 p.m. A 911 call comes in with Synthia Varela on the line, and she is frantically asking for help for her 9-year-old son Omaree, who is unresponsive after falling off a rocking horse.
Yeah, I just called my son's pediatrician. My son was playing on a metal horse, like a rocking horse. I had just given him the medication. He's on new medication. I'm disabled. He was playing with my 2-year-old. My 2-year-old pushed him off the horse, and it looked kind of like he was having a seizure or something. So I was trying to do CPR and push on his chest and try to get him sitting. What address are you at? He's really out of it. Hold on. How old is your son? He's 9. And he was pushed off the metal horse? Yeah, he was playing on it, and my little boy gets real aggressive and doesn't like to share him, so I thought Omaree's leg had got stuck and he hadn't had enough time to catch himself, but he didn't catch himself, and I heard him hit his head. So I was trying to pushing on his stomach, trying to get him, and my little boy was getting really excited, and I tried to put cold water on him. He's okay, he's going to be okay, just stop all, baby. Did he stop breathing? No, he hasn't stopped breathing, but he didn't. I tried to put cold water on him. He has Is he responding? No, he's not responding. Okay, let's get paramedics on the line 1 second.
I parked right at the bottom of the driveway, and I immediately went to the front door in an attempt to make entry. The door was locked. I pounded hard on the door and announced my identity and my presence and the need to open the door. I then began to look for a way to get into the home or the backyard. Because of the nature of what I had heard the injury was, I was trying to get somewhere into the home under the exigency.
And how did you ultimately get in?
Mr. Casaus opened the door for me.
Leave the door open.
I saw him go back into the home, and I followed. Mr. Casaus walked through the home and veered towards the east and said that way, and he pointed towards the west. I went the direction that Mr. Casaus had pointed rather than the way Mr. Casaus had gone. So I walked through the living room and through a kitchen into a large bedroom.
Hey, buddy. Hey, buddy.
Synthia Varela was in the room with 2 other children and Omaree. Omaree was on the foot of the bed. When you're looking at the bed, he's at the left bottom of the bed. He's laying on his back, his feet up to his knees, and from his knees down are hanging down off the bed. So if you were sitting on the edge of the bed and then you laid back, that would be the position that Omaree was in as a point of reference. Omaree was very thin. Omaree has some mark up near his collarbone and another one near the line of his underwear.
What was Miss Varela Casaus doing?
She was on the phone speaking to someone.
Yes.
She was also speaking to me, and I believe for a time she was using a white bag. At the time I thought it was like a Walmart grocery bag, plastic, full of ice, and she was using that near Omaree's head and neck.
As we entered the room, Stephen left to the other end of the house, kind of east side of the house, where 3 other bedrooms and a bathroom were located.
Okay. What did you think about that?
I found it odd. He didn't take us to Omaree or to where he was. He just pointed that way and then just disappeared to the other side of the house.
Was there anyone else there?
The 2 younger children were there, and they were yelling and jumping on the bed.
And how did Omaree appear to be?
Unconscious. and I began to check for signs of life.
Okay. Did you find any?
I thought I did at first. I had my, they're kind of leather gloves, they're kind of thick, and I remember reaching up to Omaree's, the left side of his, of his neck, and I thought I felt something, but the two children were going on and off the bed, and the bed was kind of moving like kids jump on a bed like a trampoline, and it was moving around a lot. And so it was hard for me to really get a sense of whether I was getting chest rises, if I was feeling a pulse. And so I remember another officer came in, Officer Wright came in. I asked her to remove everybody, and I remember leaning down to kind of feel for breath from Omaree, and that's when I discovered there was no signs of life.
Right, what did we want to do? 43, we're secure for 46. We've got about a 5-year-old boy who's unconscious but breathing. Hey, buddy. Hey, buddy. I got no pulse. Okay, I need you to hold on to the kids and stay here with the kids and try not to use the phone right now. Pay more attention to the kids than the phone. Thank you.
Almost immediately, rescue began to enter the room, and I began to assist them to lower Omaree onto the ground so we could start CPR.
I walked into an officer next to Omaree saying that there was no pulse. And so me and my partner walked up. We both checked for a pulse and determined he was pulseless and apneic, not breathing.
The patient's mother was talking with the police department, and I overheard her saying something about he was complaining of stomach pain the night before, and she gave him some medicine, and I don't know if that's what it was. We walked past them, saw Albuquerque ambulance taking the patient off the bed and turning and looking at me and telling me that the patient was pulseless and apneic. We laid him on the floor, checked again for vital signs, which we had no respirations and no pulse, and initiated CPR.
What was indicated to you about what had occurred?
From what I can remember without having my chart in my hand, that he was playing on the bed with one of his little younger siblings, and they were fighting, got pushed off, and fell back, hit his head on the tile. As we were preparing Omaree to be transported to the hospital, it was also said that he possibly could have had suicidal ideations, that he had been talking to her or something prior, a few days prior to it, that might have gotten into some medications at the house.
And did you see any sort of signs that Omaree had gotten into any medications, whether pill bottles or anything?
I didn't see any pill bottles hanging around that I could visually see. When we got him into the back of the ambulance where we had lots of light, that's when I saw a little bit more of the bruising and a bite mark on the wrist.
Bite marks, burns, and some bruising?
I believe there's only one bite mark that we saw on his arm. The bruising was in multiple locations, burn marks were in multiple locations, and then there was a laceration to the left side around the brow area.
His stomach was distended.
And what does that mean?
It means getting swollen to a point to where it's obvious, like a swollen balloon. It's taut. If you tap on it, you could almost hear a repercussion. Once we arrived to the hospital and the patient has been moved over from our gurney to the bed, to the hospital bed, that's at that point, all the doctors are already hands-on with the patient.
I remember that he was really clean. He had no blood on him anywhere. I remember feeling through his hair and feeling bumps on his head, and he had some lacerations on his head. I remember he had some circular marks, one on his lip and a couple on his chest that are all documented here.
We continued CPR. We gave him several rounds of epinephrine. We did a cardiac ultrasound looking at his heart to see if there was any activity in the heart, any meaningful squeeze, and we did that twice and there was none. So after about 20 minutes, we decided to stop trying to resuscitate him. Okay. So the most important thing to notice was that when he came in, he was dead. There was no pulse, there was no breathing, there were no signs of life. So that's the most remarkable thing. The other things that I noted that were remarkable were he had multiple bruises about his body. He had a bruise and a abrasion or laceration over his left forehead. He had these unusual kind of diamond-shaped or square-shaped skin discolorations about his nipples. His abdomen was distended, and he had what looked like a bite mark to his right wrist or forearm. We, in an otherwise healthy 9-year-old, we tried to do everything we could, but I think you could make an argument that he was dead on arrival and there was really nothing to do.
Would a fall from a rocking horse or a bed produce what you saw in Omaree that day?
No.
Did you have any opinion about the cause of death?
I think without any significant history, like being thrown out of a car, falling off a cliff, with this kind of minor trauma history and signs of trauma on him and a dead child and signs of blood loss, the only conclusion you could come to would be child abuse resulting in death.
Whilst medical staff were working on Omaree at the hospital, officers remained at the house to question Stephen and Synthia about what had actually happened. There's one officer who recalls that both of their demeanours seemed to be quite odd given the circumstances.
She was very calm. Kind of sleepy, like we call it in the field, we call it on the nod. It seems like they're kind of just dozing off all the time.
Did she exhibit concern for Omaree?
Didn't appear to.
Did she appear crying or upset over Omaree having to leave with an ambulance?
Not that I remember.
But did he exhibit signs of concern for Omaree?
He didn't appear to either.
Did he appear upset or crying?
No, sir.
I stayed where I could keep an eye on Mr. Casaus, basically keep him over in that side of the house, and requested his assistance to care for the 2 small children that you could see there. The young boy was rather rambunctious, and we wanted to keep him over on that side of the house and out of the area where Omaree was located.
How did you keep the kids calm?
We ended up moving into another room, which appeared to be like a guest room that had a TV, put some cartoons on, and the police department brought some pizza and some stuffed animals, and Mr. Casaus basically sat with the children.
Okay, so where were you today? Let me just ask the question, okay? Let me just ask the question. I don't want to hear about the cat line. So what time did you go there and where? Okay, and so you were there until about what time?
Maybe like 30 minutes ago. I would say I got there about like 2 o'clock, and then I got here maybe around 4, I'd say.
You got here about 4? Okay. And what did she say to you?
This would mark the first moment where Stephen begins to lie about what had happened at the house. He tells the officers that he was at his friend's house working on his car. Around 3 p.m, Synthia called him, hysterical, that Omaree was unresponsive after falling off the horse. He says that he came back home immediately.
Okay. She called you, you were at work, or your friend did at work? Okay, you were at work. She called your cell phone, right? Show me, what time did she call you? I don't even remember. Okay, it's on your cell phone, right? You can look on your cell phone. Okay. You can look at your cell phone and tell me what time she called you.
Okay, so what we're going to do, I'm going to hold on to your cell phone, and the text will probably write a warrant to see what's in the cell phone. But I'm going to just hold it for right now.
I asked him what time that he was called and what the time frame was. He said he was home probably at least 30 minutes prior to calling 911. And I then asked him to show me what time on his cell phone.
Was he able to do that?
No, he was not. He looked through the call log several times and skimmed through his phone and then said he couldn't find the phone call.
Omaree had arrived at the hospital at 5:18 p.m. and shortly after is pronounced dead. An autopsy is performed the following day.
He had on his scalp, this side of his head, he had what is called a laceration. And in addition, he had an abrasion above his eye. He had a same sort of injury, an abrasion on his upper lip, in this region of the mid-upper lip. And also on his tongue, he had a small bruise on the tip of his tongue. He did have a little bit of scarring on the one side of his neck. On his right arm, he had a circular bruise on this portion of the forearm. On his left arm, he had two circular contusions, and contusions are bruises. And he had two of them around the left side of his arm, and then another one on the left middle part of his forearm. He also had a bruise on his left knee. And on his left shin, he had a bruise there as well. On the left upper chest, in this region of his chest, he had three distinct bruises in this area. On his lower back, he had also another bruise. And then on his mid-chest, he had three distinct injuries that were orange, kind of had a waxy appearance to them. And I submitted these injuries for microscopic examination. And on a microscopic examination of those injuries were consistent with thermal injury.
These burn marks on his chest were verified to have been cigarette burns. I'll get into Stephen's interview with police shortly, but for now, when the man is questioned about the burn marks, he mentions that a few days prior, he was smoking a cigarette in the house, and Omaree ran into him. This caused him to accidentally burn the boy. The detectives mention that there were 3 burn marks, but Stephen says that there should have only been 1.
Could they have been caused by a child running down the hall and bumping into his dad smoking a cigarette?
With that scenario, I would expect 1. In this situation, I saw 3. On the side, there is another muscle in the abdominal region, and that muscle had a hemorrhage in it, so bleeding inside of it. So it can be considered as a bruise on the inside. The outer surface of his intestines had what we call contusions, again, bruising on the intestines. And so inside the abdomen was 500 milliliters of fresh blood.
Did anything stand out for you during that autopsy?
Yes.
And what was that?
They were ladling, the person that was working on him was ladling blood out of his stomach area.
500 milliliters accounts for Omaree's about 25% of his blood volume. On the diaphragm, which is the muscle that sits just below your lungs, both sides had hemorrhage. Looking further to trying to find a source of bleeding for all the blood that was found in the abdomen, there was blood around the pancreas and also the left, around the left kidney. That amount of blood loss, there'll be restlessness, anxiety, may appear pale. And the compensation of, it then goes on to altered mental status, where they're sort of out of it in the later stages. When someone sustains traumatic injury outside of the hospital, their chance of survival is greatest if they get to the hospital within that first hour of injury. After that, chances of survival drop significantly. And that's why there is rapid effort to remove people from cars, from car wrecks and things like that, because that hour is very crucial.
And the type of injuries that you found, are they consistent with the fall from a bed or from a bouncy horse?
I wouldn't expect that from a fall of 29 inches, which is about 2.5 feet, falling from that. No, I would not anticipate that. The cause of death determined in this case was blunt trauma.
Before the autopsy had taken place, both Synthia and Stephen were brought in for questioning. During Cynthia's interview, she says that initially she lied to Stephen about what had happened. She didn't mean to hurt Omaree, but she lost control and found herself kicking him. Using her words, "I kicked him and he went down, and then I kicked him again and again. When I kicked him, he fell back onto the tiles. He might have hit his head so hard that he cracked one of the tiles." Cynthia's asked why ice was placed on the boy's stomach, and her answer, because she kicked him directly in the stomach and knew that she messed up. Once Stephen got involved, she at this point had begun calling her friends to ask them what to do. Stephen kept telling her to get off the phone and urged her to call 911, which she eventually did, but not before making 2 more calls to friends. She claims that the very first thing Stephen said when he saw Omaree's condition was, quote, "You fucked up. You need to call an ambulance. I don't know what you did, but you fucked up." Synthia admits that it was all her. She says that Stephen in fact did nothing but try to help. Quote, "He's the one who told me I should have called an ambulance first. He said, I don't need to be calling anyone else until they got there. I just lost it today." Following her interview, Synthia is arrested for child abuse, resulting in death. Stephen Casaus also has an interview. I do have this footage, but unfortunately, a combination of him speaking very quickly and terrible audio quality makes it quite difficult to watch. I've gone over it, and I'll narrate the key points of what I could understand now. It's important to keep in mind that at the time of this interview, Stephen had not had any communication with Synthia from the moment law enforcement arrived. He had no idea what she was going to say to them in her interview, and he definitely didn't know that she was going to admit to kicking Omaree over and over. When the interview starts, Stephen says that he woke up around 12 or 12:30. Around 60 minutes passed, and he went to his friend Ed's house to work on his Cadillac. He doesn't know Ed's surname, but he was at this place for around 20 minutes when he received a call from Synthia that Omaree was in trouble. This is around 2 to 2:30 p.m. He returns home immediately, and it takes him about 5 minutes to get there. The information that he receives from Synthia upon his arrival is that Omaree was playing on the rocking horse, and his little brother shoved him off it. Omaree fell back, cracked his head on the tiles, and then had a seizure. Stephen immediately began CPR. Omaree was drifting in and out of consciousness, and in one of the extended stints where Omaree was non-responsive, Stephen placed the boy in a cold shower in an attempt to wake him up. This didn't work, so the boy was carried back to the bedroom where Stephen placed an oxygen mask over his face. It's at this point that Stephen became quite demanding, telling Synthia to call 911 right now. He recalls Omaree waking up at times and speaking, saying only the word "daddy." He claims that Omaree was breathing throughout all of this, so he's asked, why give him breaths then? Stephen answers that he didn't know what else to do. According to his story, he's adamant that he returned home close to 3 p.m. from his buddy's place, and that the 911 call was made about half an hour after that. But the detectives inform him that this doesn't add up. 911 wasn't contacted until about 4:30 p.m. Stephen is in disbelief and says that he can't believe it. Quote, "Was it really that long? Time must have slipped from me." End quote. As the interview goes on, increasing pressure is placed on Stephen from the detectives. His story begins to change. He admits that the whole going to his friend's house was a lie. He never went out. He was in fact in the bathroom using the toilet. He woke up, same time as mentioned before, and went straight into the bathroom to do his business. While he was in there, he could hear yelling between Omaree and Synthia. Stephen calls to them from the bathroom, telling them to calm down and to wait for him to get out. When he does leave the bathroom, he found Synthia on top of Omaree and she was yelling at him. This is reported to have been around 2 p.m. Attempting to figure out what was going on, he initially believed that Omaree was faking his injuries for attention. And then from here, much of his story that he told earlier is the same. Synthia is on the phone with friends, actually asking one of her friends to come out and to take the other children because she didn't want CYFD to remove them from her custody. Then Omaree receives CPR and a cold shower, and 911 are called. Stephen is asked, why didn't he call 911? At first his reason is because he thought Omaree was faking everything. But when he realized the seriousness of the situation, he became frazzled and couldn't find any of the phones he would normally use. He's asked whether he talked to his other children about what had happened, and initially he says no, but later on he admits to police that he did in fact tell them to not say anything to the officers. Quote, "If you don't say anything, everything will be okay. Don't say nothing about what happened between Omaree and Synthia." End quote. Another change in his story comes up. Although it's a slight change, it's an important one. He was in the bathroom, but doing business of another kind, shooting up heroin. As he was attempting to do this, he found it frustrating and distracting hearing the two argue in the other room. But it wasn't just arguing he heard. At times he heard stumbles and tumbles. It became so severe, he actually came out of the bathroom at one point, and he saw Synthia on top of the boy. He told her to relax, to let him focus, and he'll handle everything once he's done. At this point, he returns to the bathroom once more to continue injecting heroin. Once he was done, he came out, and that's when Omaree was unresponsive. Once more, the story is the same from this point, and an additional explanation to why he didn't call 911. He was panicked and paranoid. He does admit, though, that he should have stepped up and called them himself. After his interview, Stephen is released, with no charges against him at this point in time. Months pass, and the DA builds a case against Synthia whilst she's in and out of mental facilities for a variety of reasons. Panic attacks, injuries she claims to have sustained during prisoner transports. Although admitting things got out of control whilst trying to discipline him, she maintains a position of not guilty to murdering her son.
Synthia, how could you do this to your own child?
I didn't do it. It wasn't intentionally.
What happened?
It was an accident. I was disciplining him and I kicked him the wrong way. It was an accident.
You were disciplining him for what?
For acting out and behaving with one of my other childs.
What do you have to say for yourself? Your son is...
I messed up.
Both Omaree's younger brother and sister go into the care of their auntie, Cynthia's older sister.
Is this the first time that you have had custody of her children?
No.
When was the other time?
When Omaree was about 1.5.
And how long did you have him for?
Until he was about 3.
What happened?
My sister came with some officers one evening about 10:30 in the evening on a rainy night to come and get him. I no longer had a power of attorney, and even though we explained the situation to the officers, they said because she is the bio mom, there was nothing that we could do. Sorry. And they took him. We had to wake him up, and they took him from us.
After that point, how often would you see Omaree and his siblings?
On and off, if she came around. There were times we would go to see him and we were told he wasn't there. And so we didn't get to see him all the time. So it became distant after that. The last time I saw him, he was 7.
While Synthia is behind bars awaiting trial, she would recant her confession and claim that it was in fact her husband Stephen who killed Omaree. Synthia sends her sister a number of letters describing her feelings about the whole situation.
On the back side of that page, did she write, "The truth will come out. I'm not hiding for him anymore. He's supposed to be my husband."
Yes.
Probably about 2/3 of the way down the page, did she write, "I know I made a lot of mistakes and choices, but sister, I know, and God knows, I'm not the reason. Please believe me. Steve's conscience was and is eating him so bad. He couldn't even pay my angel his respects for me."
Yes.
I'm going to show you a letter that's being marked as State's Exhibit 61. "I love you guys with all my heart, and I'm sorry, but God will see me through, just like he brought Steve here. Karma's a motherfucker."
Yes.
Do you know when it was sent to you?
Yes. My birthday.
And how do you know that?
Because she put happy birthday, sister.
And when is your birthday?
July 20th.
And was this written after Cynthia's arrest?
Yes.
In the letter, did she write, "I love and miss them all so much. It is still very hard for me about Omaree. I'm sorry, sister. I made the wrong choices, but I didn't do anything intentional. I promise I loved my son."
Yes.
In this letter, did she write to you, "But I know Steve will suffer way more than me. Omaree will never let him rest"?
Yes.
Sylvia, I love you, and if there's any question I can answer truthfully, is that it was not at the hands of me. I allowed a lot to go on and happen, and I take responsibility for that part, but I would never do that to anyone, much less my son. She goes on, "I'm sorry, that's the impression you're under in the beginning. I tried covering in the wrong ways and said the wrong things, and I'm sorry, but what else or who else could I have turned to?" Do you recognize this letter?
Yes, sir.
Who is this letter written to?
To my daughter.
In this letter, did she write, "I'm so sorry any of this happened. I made some bad decisions and didn't protect Omaree or the babies from Steve the way I should have. I allowed Steve to influence me in all the wrong ways, and I'm sorry. But I know the truth is coming out."
Yes.
And lastly, I'd like to show you what's being marked as State's Exhibit 65. In it, did she write, "I've recanted my confession and have told my attorneys the full truth, but I do take responsibility for not being the woman or mother I should have been, for not protecting Omaree the way I should have, and allowing any of it to happen."
Yes, sir.
How are Nibby and Stevie doing with the loss of their brother?
They're taking it really hard. They miss him like crazy. And they want him back. They ask why. Why is he dead? Why can't he be here? Why can't I hold him? I just want to tell him I love him. He was a good big brother. They have bad dreams where they're screaming out for him. They mumble in their sleep. I don't understand what they're saying, but I'll hear Mari. Mari, I want you. At times, it seems like they understand, and then at times,
It seems like they don't. I was asked one time by Nevi, can't we just unbury him? Can't they fix him?
About 6 months after the incident, Omaree's younger sister, during a therapy session, begins to describe what she saw. According to her, Stephen was much more involved in the death of her brother than initially suspected. I'm passing over it right now, but I will go into detail about what she said a little later on in the video. With this information coming forward, the DA begins to seriously compile a case against Stephen to hold him responsible as well. As this is happening, in March of 2014, Stephen is pulled over in an unrelated incident, a DUI. Police find cocaine in his pocket, meth and heroin in the car, along with cash and scales. He's arrested, and the next day makes bail. Within a week, Stephen violates court orders, so another warrant for his arrest is put out. In April of 2014, Stephen's niece sets up a drug deal for her uncle. Unknowingly, it's with police, and he's busted once more with cash, weapons, and drugs. This time he doesn't get out on bail, and whilst sitting in jail, in May of 2014, he's indicted for the murder of Omaree. As a side note, his niece brought along her young child to that sting, and she is charged with drug trafficking and child abuse, seeing as her kid appeared dirty and malnourished. Whilst this is happening, Synthia is still being evaluated for whether she is mentally competent to stand for trial. Because of this, Stephen Casaus is the first to go to trial for the death of Omaree. He's facing charges such as child abuse leading to death, tampering with evidence, and intimidating a witness. During his trial, much of what you've heard in this video is used against him. Pretty much, to sum it up, the state argue that it took Stephen about 4 hours before 911 were contacted. Throughout this time, Omaree's condition would have seriously deteriorated, and it should have caused anyone to contact emergency long before he did. They say that at the least he contributed to the death of the boy because of this, but as you'll hear shortly, they do have evidence in the form of Omaree's younger sister testifying and making statements. The state believes these will link him directly to the physical abuse that Omaree sustained on that day. They also say that he tampered with evidence by bathing Omaree in a cold shower. The intention behind this was to remove any signs of blood on him. The cigarette burns were also classified as intentional child abuse. His CPR attempts were portrayed as lackluster. By his own admission, he only performed 3 to 7 chest compressions overall, but when paramedics arrived, they were doing over 100 per minute. The defense do argue though, that for a civilian with zero medical training, he had no idea what to do, and this isn't a sign at all that he wanted the boy to die. It goes to show the opposite, in fact. He cared for the boy, and was afraid of breaking his ribs or injuring him further. What I'll get into at this point of the video is the defense's side of the argument. They reject the idea that Stephen Casaus was abusive at all towards any of the children, and to support this theory, they claim that at many points throughout law enforcement interactions with him, the surviving children appeared to be quite fond of the man.
And you also witnessed firsthand interaction between Mr. Casaus and the children, right?
Yes.
And they didn't appear to be afraid of him in any way?
Not that I recall.
And one of the things that caught your attention was that the kids seemed to be suffering from, you described it as separation anxiety whenever they were taken away or not with Stephen Casaus, right?
That's correct.
And Steve, Mr. Casaus, was in the bedroom with the 2 little kids, right?
That's correct.
And they were little kids, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And Stevie, the littlest one, sort of running around and carrying on,
Yes, ma'am, he was.
and sort of required Mr. Casaus to be focused on that little guy.
Yes, ma'am. I would say that's true.
And then Nevi, the little girl, she was in their room too.
Yes, ma'am.
And he was taking care of her as well.
Yes, ma'am.
And there were no concerns raised to you or anybody else about what Mr. Casaus was doing with those two children?
Not that I was told.
That they were afraid of him?
Not that I was told.
The state had brought into question a photo taken of Stephen during his police interview. His hands can be seen swollen, and they argue that this could be an indication that he had been punching the boy. The defense have a different explanation for these swollen hands.
He told you why they were swollen, didn't he?
Eventually, yes.
He told you they were swollen because he was using heroin, right? And heroin, you can inject it into your veins,
Yes.
right? And it can cause circulation problems, right?
Sure. That side of the scope.
Steve Casaus told you his hands were swollen from using heroin, correct?
Yes.
Through the cross-examination of multiple witnesses, the defense would push the idea that many of these injuries on the child cannot be proven where they came from. Any idea that they were inflicted on the boy on the day of his death, much less by Stephen himself, are speculation at best, an attempt to condemn an innocent man. Those burn marks on the boy's chest, which Stephen actually admitted was his doing, the defense plays with the idea that they could have been a rash, although the medical examiner would put a swift end to that argument.
Is there a possibility that those could have been signs of impetigo?
Impetigo is an infectious condition of the skin. And it is seen in in children and infants. It's highly contagious. And it's not an abrasion, it looks like a rash. And it is the distribution of impetigo is typically the face, neck, hands, and the diaper region in infants. Those features are not seen here in the chest injuries. There's not a rash. Impetigo is not seen on the chest. And it's highly contagious. I would expect that siblings would have contracted it as well. It is advised that children stay home when they have impetigo because it's highly contagious.
Another piece of the defense would be this idea that he was intentionally medically negligent. The state had portrayed Stephen as callous in his lack of care for what would have been a very unwell child. But using his own words and the confession of Synthia, they say he went over and above as best he knew how to revive the child, performing CPR, placing him on oxygen, which Synthia used for her medical conditions, attempting to shower him, and so forth. When talking about the 911 call and why it wasn't placed earlier, they really double down on the idea that he had no idea where the phones were and was in a state of panic. He did, though, in fact demand Synthia call 911 because he could see that she was using a phone. The defense say that if it weren't for him, who knows what would have happened. Potentially, 911 would have never been called. Their argument is rounded off by saying that although the incident is a tragedy and Stephen is no angel, he's innocent of what he's charged with. They bring up the idea that because the case was so heavily covered by media and community outrage was at an all-time high, the DA was looking to appease social outcries for justice to be served and to show the community that they were doing everything they could. Stephen is now being held responsible for something he didn't do. And this now brings me to a crucial part of the trial, which I've mentioned a few times now, the testimony and statements of Omaree's younger sister. I actually won't present much of her testimony, because to be frank, she sounds confused and nervous. Here's a few examples.
Did you used to have a brother named Omaree? Yes. What happened to him?
He got hurt.
How did he get hurt?
He got hit.
Who did that?
My dad and my mom.
Do you remember what happened that day?
No.
Do you remember how they hurt you?
They slapped him, they punched him, they kicked him.
And did you see this happen?
Yes.
Do you have,
Well, when they smelled their lip, I did.
when you came out of your room, you did?
Yeah.
What made you come out of your room?
Because I heard somebody screaming.
And so what did you see when you went out there?
I forgot.
Who was screaming?
And God,
What was he saying?
he was saying how,
Why was he saying how?
because he got hurt.
And you remember telling me that the day that Omaree got hurt that he was bleeding because of what your mom did. Remember that?
Yeah.
And do you remember telling me, and we talked just a little bit ago, that you, since you've been living with your auntie and uncle and cousins, that they told you to say that your daddy hurt Omaree also? Do you remember telling me that?
No.
And do you remember me asking you that you were living with your aunt and uncle and the cousins that you live with, and did they ever tell you to say that Steve, your daddy, hurt Omaree? And you answered, and then yes. Do you remember saying that?
No.
What is of most interest to me regarding this young girl's experience are some drawings she made. After she had begun to admit to her therapist that Stephen was involved, she would make drawings to help her work through and express her emotions. These drawings go under heavy scrutiny during the trial.
And so this drawing, those words on there, I am mad at you, Mom and Dad.
Yes.
That's Nevi's writing?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And in this photo, or in this drawing, there's some words on there. This here says Omaree on the floor,
Yes.
crying,
Yes, ma'am.
because Mom punched him too. Is that what that says? Okay. Mr. Casaus isn't in that drawing, is he?
No, ma'am.
All right. So you talked to Nevi about this picture as well?
Yes, we talk about every picture she drew.
Right. And in here you wrote Mom punching.
Yes, ma'am.
And then over here, there's like a child with tears.
Yes.
And it says Omaree crying.
Yes.
Up here it says, I am mad. Mom is so mean.
Yes.
I'm sad.
Yes.
Mr. Casaus is not in that drawing.
Yes, ma'am.
And this says, this little girl in the purple dress, it says Nevi.
Yes, ma'am.
And punch.
Yes.
It looks like there's a fist punching Nevi and she's got a frowny face.
Yes.
And then there's a larger figure, and that says Mom.
Yes, ma'am.
Who has a smiley face.
Yes, ma'am.
And on the other hand, it says punch.
Yes.
And next to that fist, it says Omaree.
Yes.
Right? So there are no drawings of Omaree being kicked by Mr. Casaus. Is that correct?
There's one drawing of Steve kicking Omaree. She has herself, Mom, Dad, and Omaree. She had a really hard time drawing Mom. Took a break, cried, then drew Dad. Still really hard time. Took a break, cried. And she's just, why, Auntie? Why? I'm so mad. And I told her, show me mad. Show me how mad you are. So she got her pencil. She just scribbled. And I let her just scribble and scribble until she stopped. And I told her, can you tell me about your drawing and your picture and what's going on? And she cried through it. She thought Mommy was kicking him. Daddy was kicking him in the stomach. And then she screamed and started calling out for her brother and asking why. Why did they have to be mean to him? He was good.
The defense say that for months, This young girl was under immense psychological pressure from the adults around her, all telling her that Stephen was involved. And after enduring this for around 6 months, she had begun to believe what they were telling her. They even present a psychology expert to testify about memory and how memories can be implanted, children being the most susceptible to this happening. After a short 5-day trial, both sides rest and the jury comes to a verdict. The jury finds Stephen guilty on 4 of the 7 charges: recklessly causing or permitting child abuse resulting in death based on medical neglect, recklessly causing or permitting child abuse not resulting in death based on the cigarette burns, tampering with evidence for cleaning Omaree's body, and 2 counts of bribery for telling the children not to speak to officers. During sentencing, he would plead to the judge for leniency.
Your Honor, this has been one of the horrificest things that I've ever had to endure in my life. People that know me, they know how much I love my family and my kids. I'm heartbroken every day dealing with this. I'll never heal from this. I miss my son and my family each and every day, my kids, Nivea and Stevie. It's horrible what happened. God knows the truth and I know the truth. I wish I could bring him back and I would take his place for him or any of my family if I could. But I can't do that. Yes, I have made some mistakes in my life, but being a child abuser is not one. I gave my whole heart, my whole life to my children and to my wife and my family. That's all I wanted, was to give them all a good life. And I tried with my everything. My kids were not abused like everybody's making it out to be. I know I was there. And I raised them the best that I could. I will always love my baby, and I will miss him forever. And I know that there's nothing I can do to bring him back. But I just want him to rest in peace, and I want my babies to be, so they can try to heal and get through this time. I don't want this time so they can get through past this and try to live a better life. I don't want no bad for nobody. I just ask that everybody just look into their hearts and see the real truth of the matter, and know that I'm not a monster. I'm not an evil man. I'm a loving, kind, gentle. I don't want no more children to be hurt. I don't want no more violence. I just ask for love, peace, happiness, and joy for everybody in the world. I'm going to try to give back as much as I can for children that are abused, in the future. I'm going to try to be a mentor to children and to young adults. That's going to be my goal. But
I think it's a bit more than a mistake. As a jury saw it, that if Omaree is your son, is laying in incredible distress, and he certainly must have been in incredible distress, that there wasn't some absolute immediate action on your part to make sure that that distress was lessened. And I'm finding it difficult to believe it was just a mistake. So I'm concerned about it. I think everybody in the room, I don't think that anybody disagrees with you that we wish this day had never occurred, and that Omaree, as a child, would not have suffered as he did. And certainly his mom will be held accountable for her part in it. But we're not here about her part in it. We're here about your part. And so I think the sentence will be reflected. As to count 2, child abuse recklessly caused or recklessly permitted, resulting in Omaree's death, sentence you to 18 years state penitentiary. As to count 4, alternative count 4, child abuse recklessly caused or recklessly permitted, I sentence you to 3 years.
He's sentenced to 30 years behind bars. Synthia, a few months later, pleads guilty, and her case doesn't reach a jury. She receives 40 years in prison. This would normally be where the video begins to wrap up, but there's a little more to the story. Stephen would go on to appeal his conviction, and in 2019, a judge rules that there wasn't enough evidence presented to convict him on the most serious charge. It's overturned, and his sentence is reduced to 14 years. Despite that, though, he still had federal drug convictions and felon in possession of a firearm. Once he's done serving time for Omaree's death, he still has to stick it out for another 10 years. It's now at this point that I've finished presenting the Stephen Casaus trial, and I'll bring up additional information regarding the case. I'll also dive a little bit into my own thoughts regarding it all. Following this incident, the state of New Mexico would make some changes to the way cases like this are handled. As I mentioned earlier in the video, there were actually 2 officers fired in relation to the handling of reports of child abuse, and furthermore, an investigation for how CYFD operates went underway. A lawyer representing one of the officers who was fired would argue that his client is an excellent policeman and this whole thing is a witch hunt, the officer being used as a sacrificial lamb to appease community unrest. A law is passed called Omaree's Law, which requires New Mexico's Children, Youth and Families Department to immediately take custody of children showing specific injuries of abuse. It also requires the parents, guardians or custodians to complete counseling before taking custody of a child in certain circumstances. After the child is taken into custody, a hearing will be held within 48 hours. I have quite a few thoughts related to both Stephen and Synthia, and none of them good. I'll start it out with Synthia. There's no doubt in my mind that she caused the death of her son. I don't buy this argument that she was so scared of her husband that she confessed to doing all of these things that she didn't do, and she held this position for months and months until her story changed. I'm actually going to pass over my more critical thoughts of her, because frankly, I'm certain you watching probably have similar feelings towards her, and I don't think I need to echo chamber that back at you. So once I put that emotion aside, I'm left with a few questions. The main being, what happened to her? Her stepmother would say, quote, "One word, meth. It just ruined her life. She hung around meth dealers and pimps. That became her whole life." End quote. So I guess meth strikes again. I think this is like my 3rd video in a row where meth has been a key player. But in this one, much like the others, the simple explanation of meth is not enough for me to feel satisfied. I always aim to try understand what drives people to doing things like this. She seemed to be such a good child, with a very loving family, and her sister turned out productive and caring. And before you get to the comments to tell me a thing or two, I'm well aware that not every meth-addicted criminal comes from a shattered upbringing, but it still does get me to pose the question, what happened to her? After digging around for many answers as to what led her down this path of rebellion and drug abuse, I did find one interesting piece of information. It's provided by Synthia herself, so this could be nothing more than an attempt for a vile individual to make their vile actions more understandable. But nonetheless, this is what she says. She never got over the fact that her biological mother left the family and had little contact with her. It saw a deep insecurity build within her to the point that she felt dread related to abandonment. This feeling followed her through her life, and the drugs and rebellion was her way of coping. I don't doubt that this could be something simmering beneath the surface, but at the same time, come on. The sheer abuse that she inflicted on this child for years and years, the way she abandoned her very own children to go on drug binges, something which she claims she was terrified of. I guess the old saying that pain causes pain is more relevant here than ever, hey? Stephen Casaus is where things start to get interesting, despicably interesting. There's one question that I'm unable to answer. How involved was he? I feel I need to preface these thoughts by saying that I'm not for a second feeling any sympathy towards his plight. Whether he directly beat that child or not doesn't change the fact that this drug addict was responsible in some way. I'm not really questioning the morality of how involved he was, but it's the legal argument of how involved he was that interests me. Maybe Omaree's younger sister did have memories implanted. Maybe she recalls incorrectly and believes the story told by others. But in saying that, we all heard that 911 call where Stephen was verbally abusing Omaree. That was a little window into what that kid's life was like. I can't even begin to imagine all of the things he endured when there was no open 911 call documenting it. We heard things such as, "I hate you, Omaree. No one has ever made me as sick as you do. No one will ever love you." Then, seemingly at the drop of a hat, Stephen shifts into the role of a loving father. He says, "I just want what's best for you. I want you to have a good life. I'm trying to teach you things so you don't need to learn the hard way." I'm sorry, Stephen, but you are actually teaching him the hardest way possible, through manipulation and abuse. How often abusers get that moment of hatred out of their system, dousing their victim in pure psychological carnage, and then they switch. Maybe it's due to remorse, realization that they've pushed their victim too far. Maybe they're simply psychotic and the episode passed. Whatever the reason, it's damaging and disgusting, and that's what I saw happening there. This man gives me serious chills. His constant need to refer to himself as their daddy. It's like watching a parasite take root into its victim, a family of young children being the target here. Whatever his reasoning, he gets a kick out of being a father, and simply put, it's gross to look at. A father, in my opinion, is more than a placeholder title for anyone who sits in that seat. Sure, everyone does have a father, be they present, pleasant, or less than optimal. But a true father, just like a true mother, is a caring, loving, and selfless figure. One that places the child's needs above their own and works to understand the intricacies of how each unique child operates. Just look at this man, smoking cigarettes in enclosed spaces near them, by his own words, negligently burning them, putting them in danger. He yells, lies, shoots up heroin near them. This isn't a father. This is no daddy, and it's plain revolting to see this monster wearing a father's skin. Further leaning into the idea that he's abusive, it's well documented that abusive parents will often target one child whilst favouring the others. This argument that the surviving children loved him so very much, they weren't scared of him at all, it holds no weight in my eyes. They very well might have, but it doesn't change the fact that I believe Omaree was a thorn in his side, and he treated that poor boy like trash because of it. Also, for the minute, let's say that he was abusive towards them, but quite possibly their mother could have been even worse. In a bad situation, people will seek relief and safety in any way they can, and after watching their mother lose control and stomp their brother to death, it makes sense to me that once their house began swarming with unknown adults, law enforcement, they sought refuge in the only adult they recognized and felt somewhat safe with him. So this leads me to the next question. If he wasn't directly involved with the abuse that led to death, but is still a horrible person overall, is it right for him to be charged with a crime that he didn't commit as a karmic way of justice being served? Well, the law thinks not, as expected. But me? I don't know. Let's just say, if he didn't do it, but still got stuck with that 30-year sentence that was initially set, I wouldn't have lost any sleep on that one, hey? As a bit of a side thought to all of this, I've noticed a pattern emerge. It's quite interesting, isn't it? How all guilty perps that call 911 seem to follow a similar pattern of over-explaining nonsensical details to the operator. Have a listen.
Yeah, I just called my son's pediatrician. My son was playing on a metal horse, like a rocking horse. I had just
Stephen is on medication. He's on new medication. I'm disabled. He was playing with my 2-year-old. My 2-year-old pushed him off the horse.
Oh, Synthia. You called the pediatrician, right, did you? Whilst your son is dying. What more can you tell us, please? What an imbecile. Pretty much. She was just one McDonald's large drink away from attaining Sean Free's ridiculous status, hey? If you recall, Sean Freeze had a good old chat with the operator for about a minute about how he bought a large drink, loves going for drives to clear his mind, and so on, before revealing that both of his parents are laying dead in the house. The guilty mind of a serious criminal is quite the strange beast to observe. Anyway, I'll move my thoughts away from these two and focus in on Omaree. As with many child victims, there's not much information available to uncover regarding who he was, so I rely on statements made by people who love and miss him. Here's a quote from the family that looked after him reportedly more than his mother did. "Happy heavenly 20th birthday, Omaree. Our angel, Omaree. So very hard to believe you are celebrating your 20th birthday in heaven. We know you are safe, happy and very loved. We all love you, Omaree. Watch over us until we meet again." End quote. How much has to happen before someone steps in? I understand that the criticism directed towards children's services is very well discussed, so I won't say much here about it, other than what a complete and utter crap show, hey. It sends shivers down my spine thinking about what this poor child went through, even as early as that first body cam footage. Through that, the mother's words, you can get an understanding of the mentality of the woman, the childish, immature, and severely manipulative mentality. She's being questioned about why she swore and shoved her son so severely that people called 911. Her response to this is not to reflect and say, you know what, maybe I went too far, but instead she subtly shifts blame to Omaree, saying that everything she does is to try and teach him, to help him get rid of his negative behaviors. It's quite stomach-turning to think about how she does this when I really get into it, hey? The idea that an adult law enforcement officer needs to be called to a house to discuss with the adult parent their behavior towards a child. The last thing anyone should be doing in that situation is trying to blame that child, even be it indirectly. To add another thought into the mix, if Omaree is acting out and his behavior is incredibly poor, maybe it's because he's living with two underdeveloped apes for parents. Verbal abuse, physical abuse, drug abuse. Every form of abuse one can think of, throw it into the pot, and that's probably what this 9-year-old was managing on a day-to-day basis. Furthermore, how about right at the end of the second body cam footage? The police are leaving, and Synthia asks them if it's okay that she makes Omaree do yard work. One can see through the nonsense, as though it were made out of crystal, attempting to portray to the officer that the worst form of abuse she might dish out is yard work. Sneaky, sneaky indeed, Synthia. I wonder if she just got a copy of Manipulator's Handbook 101 and figured she'd try out this clunky beginner's trick on the officer, hey? This is how it reads. Ask officer about yard work. Act as though that's the worst she can think of in terms of her behavior towards her son. Sit back and reap the rewards of everyone around you, at the very least, trashing any suspicion that you're abusive. But at the best, they begin praising you for teaching your child some good old-fashioned responsibility. Flawlessly executed, Synthia. Absolutely flawless. Anyway, I said I wasn't going to talk about the adults anymore in this situation, and I was supposed to be focusing on Omaree, so I'll recenter my thoughts. For this part of the video, I'll leave you with words from the very people who cared so deeply about him.
Nebi on many occasions has talked about Esteban hitting her with a belt, punching her, kicking her. How her and Omaree would hide in a dark closet so that they could be safe from Synthia and Steve. Also at times put in the closet from them in a dark place, scared and afraid. They would get mad at him. Steve would get mad at him. And he pointed a gun at them. Didn't shoot it. But they were scared. Nevi also talked about the scars that she had on her body, which were cigarette burns from both of them. Little Stevie has told us about his stepmom hitting him with a bat and about being bit. They talked about being left in the car by themselves all the time while they ran into the store or ran into a house. Crying, scared, not sure what was going on. Talked about seeing needles laying around the house. All these disclosures came from these two kids while watching TV, while out in public, just randomly while we were with family, never knowing what may trigger a memory or a thought. Even that night Omaree was killed, she came to me, Auntie. I saw Mommy and Daddy punching and kicking him. They dragged him to the shower. She talks about Omaree screaming for help. She's asking him to stop. No one listened. She remembers seeing Omaree with blood on his face. She talks about sitting on the bed with Omaree as his body just lays there, not knowing if he's asleep or dead. It's been almost 2 years now and things are still hard for them. They still don't understand why their brother can't be fixed. Every day is saying, I miss him, Auntie. I just want him back. They never got to say their last goodbyes. So we make trips to the cemetery so that they can talk to him. That in itself is hard. Because then the questions come. Auntie, why? Why, Auntie? Why can't we just dig him up and fix him? I just want to see a piece of him, Auntie. I just want to touch my brother Omaree. Then she talks about wanting to go to heaven so she can be with him. Omaree, when he was little, lived with me during his young life because of certain circumstances, because Steve put him in, throwing him against the wall, being caught in a stolen vehicle, and the environment that they lived in. So I raised Omaree with my family. Then he was taken from us, and we relived the pain and the hurt of that every single day. Omaree was only 9 years old when his life came to an end. Despite the abuse and neglect that plagued his young life, Omaree was an incredible and loving child, was always trying to please the adults around him. Omaree's behavior issues were a result of his living environment. The things that he had to witness, the things that he went through. Omaree had a beautiful smile. He loved his little brother and sister so very much. Omaree was their big brother, their best friend, their caregiver, and at times, their protector. Omaree at school would help a classmate who had a walker walk up the stairs while he would carry the walker, being carried and still showing what kind of a kid this child was. He enjoyed playing basketball with his friends. No one knew the pain Omaree was going through. He had dreams, he had goals, which he will never get a chance to do. Omaree was amazing. So what did this 9-year-old boy do that was so bad to have his life taken from him 2 days after Christmas and 2 months before his birthday?